General Hospital spoilers reveals that the truth about Marco's identity has caused an emotional earthquake in Lucas's life. When the final pieces of the puzzle were revealed, showing that Marco was actually Natalia and Sidwell's secret son, Lucas fell into a state of complete shock, unable to believe what was happening. This was not just an ordinary family secret. It also involved complicated relationships and dark schemes that Port Charles had witnessed over the past months. On that fateful evening at Metro Court, when Marco confessed everything, Lucas stood there, pale-faced, unable to speak. The memories of times when Marco avoided questions about his family, the secret phone calls, and the moments when he suddenly disappeared, all of them made sense now. Marco was not just an ordinary lawyer from Miami as he had claimed, but part of a larger plan. A conspiracy woven by Sidwell to infiltrate the heart of Port Charles. Their breakup took place in tears and anger. Lucas felt deeply betrayed. Not only because Marco had lied about his identity but also because he had exploited Lucas's feelings to gain information about the hospital and the Quartermaine family. Every sweet moment they had shared now seemed tainted with suspicion and pain. Brad, who had been silently observing their relationship from a distance, quickly appeared by Lucas's side during this difficult time. Brad's presence only complicated things further, as Lucas had to confront the lingering emotions from their previous relationship while still grappling with the pain from Marco's betrayal. New obsessions began to form in Lucas's mind. He couldn't sleep, constantly revisiting the texts and images of them together, looking for signs he had missed. Every time his phone vibrated, his heart raced, hoping it was Marco calling to explain, to say his feelings were real, that not everything had been a lie. At the hospital, everyone noticed the change in Lucas. He became irritable, unfocused, and sometimes even made basic medical mistakes, something that had never happened before. Elizabeth tried to talk to him, but Lucas closed himself off, unwilling to share his pain with anyone. In a desperate attempt to find the truth, Lucas broke into Marco's apartment, only to discover that it had been cleaned out. There was no trace of the man he thought he had loved. All that remained was a torn photo of them together at the dock, pinned to the wall, a cryptic message Lucas couldn't decipher. Lucas's psychological adjustment after this shock was painful. He began to doubt his judgment, wondering if he could trust anyone anymore. Every new face became a potential threat, every word could be a lie. This paranoia was slowly eroding not only his personal life but also his medical career. Meanwhile, Marco had reappeared at Sidwell's mansion, where he was welcomed as a hero who had completed his mission. But behind his fake smile, it was clear that Marco was also struggling with his true feelings for Lucas. Could it be that not everything had been a lie? Or had Marco truly developed real feelings during the execution of his father's plan? This breakup was not only the end of a relationship but also the beginning of a new series of events, full of twists and unpredictability at Port Charles. As Lucas tried to move past the pain and find himself again, Marco had to face the consequences of his deception and perhaps even betraying his family for love. The days ahead at General Hospital promised many surprises as the story of Lucas, Marco, and the secrets of the Sidwell family continued to unfold, leaving more questions than answers for the show's loyal viewers. Lucas was going through severe emotional shock upon discovering the dark truth about Marco. What he had once believed to be a genuine relationship was slowly being exposed as a web of lies spun by Sidwell. On that fateful night at the Metro Court restaurant, Lucas accidentally overheard a conversation between Marco and an unfamiliar man about a plan targeting General Hospital and the Quartermaine family. Every puzzle piece began to fit: Marco's questions about the hospital's infrastructure, his particular interest in the lab, and the secret calls Lucas had intercepted. When faced with these accusations, Marco initially denied everything, but the pressure from Lucas eventually led him to confess that he was Sidwell and Natalia's son. Marco admitted that his father had tasked him with getting close to Lucas to gather information about the hospital, which Sidwell was targeting for a revenge plan against Sonny and his allies. However, Marco insisted that his feelings for Lucas were real, that he had developed genuine emotions while carrying out his mission. Lucas, deeply hurt and feeling betrayed, couldn't accept this explanation. He threw Marco out of his apartment in a painful rage, hurling accusations of lies and manipulation. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. Constantly reviewing their messages and photos together, searching for signs of deceit he had missed. Every sweet moment now seemed tainted with suspicion. At the hospital, Elizabeth and Terry noticed a noticeable change in Lucas's behavior. He became irritable, unfocused, and occasionally made basic medical errors, something that had never happened before. When Elizabeth tried to talk to him, Lucas exploded in a rare outburst of anger, leaving the emergency room in stunned silence. Epiphany had to intervene and suggest that Lucas take a few days off to calm down. During this time, Brad showed up at Lucas's apartment under the pretense of delivering some work-related documents. But clearly, he was trying to get close to Lucas at his most vulnerable. Brad attempted to comfort Lucas, reminiscing about their past and implying that perhaps this was a sign they should get back together. Lucas, despite being in a vulnerable state, was sharp enough to recognize Brad's motives and politely but firmly asked him to leave. Meanwhile, Marco was facing the consequences of his actions. At Sidwell's mansion, he was severely criticized by his father for allowing personal emotions to interfere with his mission. Sidwell threatened to remove Marco from the plan and even from the family if he didn't prove his loyalty. To do so, Marco was tasked with planting a tracking device in Lucas's apartment and installing spyware on his computer at the hospital. Torn between his loyalty to his family and his real feelings for Lucas, Marco turned to Natalia for advice. This meeting revealed a more complex aspect of their family dynamic. Natalia revealed that she had been controlled and manipulated by Sidwell for years, and she didn't want Marco to fall into the same trap. She advised Marco to listen to his heart and warned him about the dangerous consequences of Sidwell's plan. With Natalia's help, Marco decided to betray his father and warn Lucas about the danger that was threatening him. He sent an anonymous message to Lucas's phone, warning about an impending attack at the hospital. Despite his doubts, Lucas passed this information on to Dante and Jordan, who increased security at the hospital. The tension reached its peak when Sidwell discovered Marco's betrayal. In a dramatic confrontation at the docks, Sidwell threatened Marco's life, declaring that he was no longer his son. This confrontation was interrupted by the appearance of Lucas, who had been following Marco after recognizing the writing style in the anonymous message. Now, Lucas, Marco, and Sidwell were in a dangerous situation, with Sidwell holding a gun and threatening both of them. Marco tried to protect Lucas, standing between him and his father's gun. In that tense moment, a gunshot rang out. But the one who was injured was not Lucas or Marco, but Sidwell, shot by an anonymous gunman from the shadows. As Sidwell collapsed, Marco and Lucas tried to save him, with Lucas's medical skills playing a crucial role in keeping Sidwell alive until the ambulance arrived. In those life-or-death moments, Lucas saw a different side of Marco, the genuine concern he had for his father despite everything, and the courage he showed when he was willing to sacrifice himself to protect Lucas. When Sidwell was taken to the hospital, Marco and Lucas had an honest conversation. Marco admitted all his wrongdoings and didn't expect forgiveness, but he wanted Lucas to know that his feelings were real. Lucas, though still in pain and anger, began to see the situation in a more complex light. He couldn't deny that Marco had saved his life and had betrayed his father to do the right thing. The relationship between Lucas and Marco was now at a crossroads. They couldn't go back to how things were before, but perhaps there was a path forward, a path full of challenges but also one that could lead to deeper understanding and forgiveness. Meanwhile, the question of who shot Sidwell and why remained unanswered, promising to open a new chapter full of mystery and danger in their story. The days ahead in Port Charles promised many surprises as Lucas faced the complex emotions he had for Marco while still trying to protect the hospital and those he cared about from the looming threat of Sidwell's plan, a plan that could still continue even as he lay in a hospital bed. A new disaster is looming over Port Charles as secrets about Marco begin to surface. Lucas is faced with a tough decision after discovering that Marco is not just a charming lawyer from Miami, but also the son of Sidwell and Natalia. Their blossoming relationship is now threatened by these dark secrets. on a fateful evening at Metro Court. Lucas overhears a conversation between Marco and a mysterious man about a plan targeting General Hospital and the Quartermain family. All the pieces start falling into place: the questions Marco had about the hospital's infrastructure, his particular interest in the lab, and the secret calls Lucas had overheard. Meanwhile, Brad has not given up hope of winning back Lucas's affection. Although Lucas showed interest in Marco after their meeting in Miami, Brad continues to sabotage their relationship. Brad's jealousy drives him to take reckless actions, including hiring a private investigator to dig into Marco's past. What he uncovers is more than he expected. Not only is Marco the son of Sidwell, a notorious figure in conflict with Sonny over the penthouse bombing, but he is also linked to a criminal organization in Miami. Brad manages to approach Lucas at the hospital, pretending to be concerned for his safety, and reveals this information. Initially skeptical of Brad's words, Lucas decides to investigate the truth for himself. He confronts Marco about the accusations, and in a tense moment, Marco confesses his true identity. However, he insists that his feelings for Lucas are genuine, and he has been trying to distance himself from his father's influence. The biggest shock comes when Lucas discovers that not only is Marco connected to Sidwell, but Brad is also secretly working for Sidwell to keep tabs on Marco. Sidwell approached Brad after he was threatened with being fired by Portia, and Brad agreed to help Sidwell in exchange for job security and a chance to win back Lucas. This double betrayal leaves Lucas completely devastated. The situation becomes even more chaotic when Marco is recruited by Diane and Alexis to be a lawyer in Port Charles, meaning he will stay in the city long term. Marco's frequent presence will undoubtedly raise tensions between him, Brad, and Lucas. In a desperate attempt to prove his loyalty to Lucas, Marco decides to betray his father and provide the police with information about Sidwell's plans. However, before he can do so, Sidwell learns of his son's intentions and arranges a confrontation at the docks. After receiving a distressing message from Marco, Lucas rushes to the docks, only to witness a horrifying sight. Marco is severely injured after trying to protect Lucas from a hitman hired by Sidwell. In that life-or-death moment, Brad appears and saves both Lucas and Marco, revealing that he has been secretly following Sidwell and uncovered his plan. At the hospital, as Marco undergoes surgery, Lucas grapples with his complex emotions. On one hand, he feels betrayed by both Marco and Brad. On the other, he cannot deny that both risked their lives to protect him. Elizabeth and Terry try to comfort Lucas, but he remains consumed by confusion and pain. Natalia, upon hearing that her son has been injured, rushes to the hospital and has a tense confrontation with Sidwell, who is also trying to approach Marco. In an emotional moment, Natalia reveals to Lucas that she has been trying to protect Marco from Sidwell's influence for years, and that Marco's feelings for Lucas are the only thing that has made him want to change his life. When Marco wakes up after surgery, he asks to speak with Lucas privately. In an emotional conversation, Marco confesses everything, from initially approaching Lucas under his father's orders, to gradually developing real feelings for him, and finally deciding to betray Sidwell to protect Lucas. He doesn't expect forgiveness but wants Lucas to know the truth. Meanwhile, Brad faces the consequences of betraying Sidwell. He is protected by Jordan, but still fears for his safety. In a meeting with Lucas in the hospital hallway, Brad admits that while he initially approached Sidwell hoping to win Lucas back, he ultimately realized that the most important thing is Lucas's safety and happiness, even if that means Lucas will be with Marco. The unexpected appearance of Blaze, Marco's sister, adds a new layer of complexity to the story. Blaze reveals that she has known about her father's plan for a long time and tried to warn Marco, but her brother trusted Sidwell too much. Now, Blaze wants to help Marco and Lucas fight Sidwell, who is still continuing his plan from the hospital. In a surprising turn of events, Spinelli discovers that Sidwell's plan isn't just targeting Sonny and the Quartermains, but also involves a dangerous virus being developed in a secret lab. If this virus is released, it could cause a medical disaster for all of Port Charles. Lucas, with his medical knowledge, realizes the danger and decides to team up with Marco, Brad, and Blaze to stop Sidwell's plan. This unexpected alliance, between the two men who once loved Lucas and Marco's sister, forms as they unite for a common purpose. As they work together to locate the secret lab, Lucas gets the chance to observe both Marco and Brad in high-stress situations. He sees the courage and kindness in both men, and realizes that while they have both made mistakes, they truly care about him. When they finally locate the lab, hidden beneath a warehouse near the docks, they face a difficult decision. Both Marco and Brad volunteer to go inside to disable the virus, even though they know it could expose them to danger. Lucas, not wanting to lose either of them, insists that as the doctor, he should be the one to go in. Ultimately, they decide to act together, with Blaze outside to contact the police. When they break into the lab, they encounter one of Sidwell's allies preparing to activate the virus dispensing device. In the ensuing struggle, Brad is injured, but Marco and Lucas manage to disable the device. As they try to leave the lab with the injured Brad, they find the door locked from the outside. With the air becoming increasingly toxic due to the chemical leak, Lucas and Marco must work together to find a way out while keeping Brad conscious. In those final moments, with the air growing thinner, Lucas confesses that although he feels betrayed, he cannot deny his feelings for Marco. Marco responds by promising that if they survive, he will spend the rest of his life proving he deserves Lucas's love. Brad, though weak from his injury, overhears this conversation and tells Lucas that he just wants him to be happy, even if that means not being with him. It's a moving moment of acceptance and letting go. When it seems like all hope is lost, the door suddenly opens, and Dante, along with a SWAT team, arrives to rescue them. Blaze successfully contacted the police and led them to the lab. At the hospital, after being treated for chemical exposure and injuries, Lucas takes time to reflect on everything that has happened. He visits both Marco and Brad, who are recovering in separate rooms. With Brad, Lucas expresses his gratitude for his courage and admits that despite their complicated past, he still cares about Brad as a friend. Brad, though saddened, accepts this and says he will always be there for Lucas if he needs him. With Marco, the conversation is much more complex. Lucas admits that he still has strong feelings for Marco, but he needs time to rebuild trust. Marco understands and promises to wait, giving Lucas the space he needs while proving that he has truly changed. Sidwell, after his plan is thwarted, tries to escape Port Charles but is caught by Dante and Jordan at the airport. Natalia, finally free from Sidwell's influence, decides to stay in Port Charles to support Marco and Blaze as they rebuild their lives. As things slowly settle down, Lucas finds a moment of peace at the docks, where he often goes to think. There, he meets Elizabeth, who listens to his story and offers wise advice. Sometimes, the most complicated relationships are the ones that are worth it. But in the end, you have to listen to your heart. With these words, Lucas gazes at the water, reflecting on his future. He doesn't know whether he will find his way back to Marco, or perhaps one day be with Brad, or even start a completely new chapter. But for the first time in weeks of chaos, he feels a sense of peace, a feeling that no matter what happens, he is strong enough to face it. The coming days in Port Charles promise more unexpected twists as Lucas continues his journey to find happiness, while both Marco and Brad strive to prove themselves and rebuild their lives after the turmoil. And with Sidwell arrested but still having many allies outside, the threat to the city and those Lucas cares about may not be truly over.